Okay, guys, here we are once again with the Krishnacore podcast. Um, here we are this time with Fabio from Italy. He used to sing in the band's Absence and also in Destroy Babylon. And also with Mike, who is an academic from UK. Okay, so Mike, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good, Madhu.
Yeah, Fabio, how are you? Everything okay? See you.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah. Nice. Mike.
Shall I start?
Yes.
Fabio, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm really good.
Could you just introduce yourself? From what I've read a few interviews from you about you, and I know that you were born originally from Torino in Italy in the mid 1970s. So, and you became straight edge in like about 1992.
91, 92. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What happened was when I was like 15 years old, I was living down south, with my family. And my brother was like, he was dating some girl from England. And somehow they came up with the idea, like, why don't we send Fabio to the US, so he can learn English? And I'm like, whatever, I'll do it. So I just moved and I lived for about a year in Nevada. And what happened, the funny thing was one of the very few European students was Torgny, the singer of Onward from Oslo. So, we ended up skating together and hanging out together like every single day. So we became super friends. And, the guy was like already into like a lot of stuff, right? And he was vegetarian, he was straight edge, and, he introduced me to like a whole lot of stuff. And that was like, the very beginning of everything, lots of records, lots of like sharing and lots of tapes, actually, like, not so many records because I had no cash for records. Lots of tapes. But, when I came back, it was like, spent about a year in Nevada, and like, I had like 3 or 4 guys, to get in touch with when I came back to Italy, because I knew these guys were like into hardcore and straight edge. And that's what happened. I wrote a letter to, every single one of them. And, at the time there was like a handful of like, hardcore kids in the country. And that's when it all started. And I was like super lucky to find like a few straight edge kids in Torino, my hometown. And, we started, this like very, very early band, nobody knows of. It's, it was called Fallen Victim, but it was like already big and straight edge in like 92, 93. But, we only did a demo tape, that was it.
And then we've just been talking actually before pressing record. So, and you came over to the UK to study marketing down in Brighton.
Yeah. Like after, right after high school, so the plan was, okay, why don't we send Fabio to learn English so he can join like an English university and we don't have to pay for anything, right?
Yeah.
Because, my parents didn't have money for like, that kind of education. And that's what happened, like I kind of learned English, the hard way. And I ended up in Brighton, doing this like super cool business school, And, on top of that, like during the 3rd year, I was like, living in the UK, but I was like sent back to Nevada to work, for 6 months at the MGM. And that's where like, Mike Tyson and all those guys, used to fight. And I work in the marketing and, like that kind of department. And, like the coolest thing ever is that I was actually like working at the MGM when Tupac was shot, that night in 1996,
Wow.
So, yeah, I don't know who it was, but whatever.
and then after that, so we're going from 1991, 92 when you were skateboarding and you found sort of, become straight edge. Then in kind of the mid 90s, you went over to the UK, came over here, not far from Portsmouth, 50 miles away. And then 1998, I've got it here that you started your own clothing company called E-Blood.
Exactly. So right after college, right after university, the plan was like all my friends were like joining this like very mainstream corporate businesses. And I was like, dude, I can't do that. Look at me, like I'm not going to work for like, those kind of companies. And, I was lucky enough again, like in the US, during high school, one of my skater friends, he was already into like, the skateboarding fashion industry somehow. So when I finished, college, I was like, all right, let me just come up, with like something that combines my ethics, my passion for fashion, and let me just try something that nobody's ever tried before. I mean, at the time, you remember, like, there was like Cabal, from the States, like doing like jerseys and stuff like that. But no one from the hardcore scene ever made like denim or like proper jackets and stuff like that. And I mean, it wasn't even a joke when I started. I mean, I asked my dad, I was like, okay, can I just borrow some money? And all he gave me was like the equivalent of like 300 euros.
Right, yeah.
At the time we had liras, but it was like, that much. And I was like, what can I do with this? And I made, like a few samples, like one denim, 2 hoodies, and 1 t-shirt, and I started like, going to shows and going to skate shops and like driving. And dude, I literally lived in my car for 2 years.
I was going to ask you about the living in the car.
Literally fucking lived in my car for 2 years and like, took showers in gas stations and shit. And like, asking friends to, sleep on the couch and, the hardcore life. And it was fun. And it was, pre like, internet. And somehow it worked, like within 4 seasons, which means like 2 years, we had become like the 3rd largest clothing company, like streetwear clothing company in the country. So,
wow.
Yeah, that became like very successful. I mean, it was cool. It was like I was the only one in the industry to have that kind of like a business background, but I also had like street cred and like I came from the hardcore scene. It was kind of like good combination of like things, and it kind of worked. And yeah, from there like my fashion thing like grew bigger and bigger, and it was cool because like through eBlood I totally pushed like veganism, straight edge, and animal liberation, like all the stuff that I was into, and it never really stopped.
Yeah,
I've been doing the same thing for like 22 23 years now.
because I was reading in an interview about your mum and dad coming to visit you when you were living in the car. And to other people it was quite bizarre that you were living like this, but for you said that actually it felt quite natural because it was kind of, what am I trying to say, that kind of thingy back kind of existence.
Well, the thing was like I had no plan B. It's not like I had like money to fall back on or like parents to fall back. Like I didn't have that. So I ended up like really focusing like super hard on like I was doing everything, like design, like proper designing, like choosing fabrics and like accounting, like everything. And it was like stressful but cool at the same time. And it was nice to have this kind of support from like everyone in the hardcore scene. We started like promoting the brand through like Earth Crisis and all these like big bands that kind of like became friends.
Right. And so in 2005 you started Hannibal.
Yes, yeah, Hannibal store 2005, and then I opened the second one like 5 or 6 years later. And then the third one, and 2 years ago, we opened, this store in LA on Fairfax, which I don't know what's, I don't know, after all this crazy period, I don't know what's going to happen to that, but yeah, I really can't wait to travel again and like, just start doing new things.
Yeah. Come back to Brighton. Come over to Brighton.
Yeah. It's funny because I never really talk about my UK period, like for some reason, but it's cool. You're, okay, let's do
it. Go on, Madhu. Would you like to continue?
Yeah. I know you have a close relationship with Ragnar Das, with the vocalist of Shelter and Better Than 1,000 and some other bands. But in the last 10 years, I think you came closer to, and also you have a close admiration for Radhanath Maharaj.
Yeah.
how comes that you came closer also to Krishna consciousness, and what makes you embrace the Krishna consciousness?
Right. Okay, so let's trace it back to like again 91, 92. With Torg and like the first guys from the hardcore scene. I mean, like Krishna has always been around, right?
Yeah.
Leeds and I mean, Shelter was huge, and 108 came along, and I was a huge fan. But and I did have like a copy of the Gita, like everything was around me, the devotees and everything. But it was never, it never became a priority for me. It's always been around, but it never became a priority. And when they say like pain can be the best of teachers, it's so true sometimes. And what happened, like about 10 years ago. So basically me and my ex, broke up, and she's from Finland, and we do have a baby together. And at the time, my daughter was 1, and we broke up, and she went back to Finland, with the baby. And to me, coming from like, this very traditional Italian family was like the hardest thing to cope with. And I was like super, super depressed. I was going through this very dark period of my life. And somehow Raghu came along, with this like very early Facebook thing, saying like, hey, I'm going to India, like, and I'm like, oh man, like, should I just join like Ray Capo to go to India? This is so bizarre, but like it happened, and God knows how much, I owe, Raghunath, for, the first trip, we took together, and like, the whole like Krishna flow, that came along with it. And that was like, 10 years ago. So yeah, that was like, the first trip. And, obviously I was like, living in my ego. I was living in my, this like, thing that I was telling myself, why is this happening to me? And I was like, caught up in this why me mantra, which is very dangerous sometimes, right? So yeah, like India really opened, a lot of doors, within my perception and within my faith. And obviously music, kirtan, like in the bhajans just did a lot, to me. And yeah, I've been like trying to give my support, to the movement ever since.
And did you believe in God before this?
What?
Italian family.
Yeah, it's funny. I was interviewed, by Raghunath, with their podcast, Wisdom of the Sages, and I was like sharing the same thing. I mean, I did go to like a Catholic school, when I grew up down south in Italy, and we're talking like late 70s, early 80s, and dude, it was brutal, it was super hard, like, I mean, the thing was like, I was doing okay in school. So like, the nuns and the priests, would not really touch me, that much. But I mean, we're talking like, beating up kids every single day, kids bleed every single day. And, when you're like 10 years old, 12 years old, like you associate, like, and you combine in your head, okay, this is like church, this is God, this is the religion, that stands for whatever they stand for. But I mean, they're beating up my friends every single day. How can that be good?
Mm-hmm.
How can that be like, how can they make sense? So as a kid, I was like, I was pushing everything away, I was literally pushing like all these like concepts away. And that of course led, to like anarchism, and it led to like, all those like squat, years of like, just like, being a punk or whatever. And I was sharing the same thing, like, the what do you call it? The no gods, no master, thing, like made a much more sense, than like anything, these people tried to promote, and whatever they stood for. Because I mean, they stood for like true violence. We're not talking like, just a little slap. I mean, these guys, I mean, they were like punching kids. That's crazy. I mean, how would you react, if someone, did that to your daughter? That's crazy. So, that's what happened. And yeah, like it's a hard question. I don't know if I believed in God. I mean, it was, part of my life, obviously, but I pushed it away.
Yeah.
Big time.
Wait.
But I was always, I mean, to be honest, I was always fascinated, by like spiritual things and like spiritual issues, like all my life.
So in this way, what it makes Krishna consciousness so special for you that it's makes you embrace it more?
To me, Krishna consciousness works on a daily basis. The sweetness works, the kindness towards people works, the kindness towards myself works. And so, like, the ideals of, like, serving others, putting myself out of the center, out of the equation, it really makes sense. And I'm not here to debate like any philosophical stuff, because, like, I mean, in the end, like, who cares? It really works for me, and it really works for, like, the kind of like future that I see ahead of me too. I mean, tonight I'm super happy. I'm going to like I'm gonna organize a photo shoot for like Food for Life at the local temple. I mean, these guys are serving like 350 meals a day. Isn't that amazing? And to be part of, like, something so awesome and so caring, and so, I mean, it's just a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful way to live. And I'm sure like other paths are like just as cool, just as like, awesome, but somehow Ragu made sense. And what really makes the difference in my life is that people like yourselves and people like Raghunath, you speak my language. Aesthetically, you speak like, my music. You have like, the background counts a lot too. We all say that, back in the day, like 1991, 1992, how would you react if you saw this like crazy looking Swami approaching? I mean, you'd be like, oh, okay, this guy looks super weird, but of course, like, Ray and like, those guys, they made much more sense, because they come from the same background, and they used, this music, as a means to like promote incredible things. And it worked, for a whole generation.
It's really odd is the wrong word really, but the amount of punk Krishnacore punks that we talk to say exactly the same thing, and also, I mean, we talked to Balarama Das for M4S from the Philippines, who came to Krishnacore via anarchism.
Wow.
Which was an incredible story in itself, and it was because he said there was this sense of justice within Krishnacore, that, as you say, serving people, helping each other out, and being cooperative with each other.
Yeah,
he put the two and two together, very much like Tolstoy did through Christianity. And I was reading before this interview about Sean Mataki from Vegan Right, talking about him and his journey towards Islam. And he says that, the thing is about punk, it's a natural place in which we search for truth, and we search to make ourselves a better person. And it is that kind of searching, whereas most people think of punk as kind of being no rules, kind of drinking and
yeah, but I mean, that's how it was, and that's how it is, like in the very early stage of your life. You kind of want to rebel, but I mean, that kind of rebellion just leads to nothing.
Yeah.
And if you're like a genuine, if you search, with a sincere heart, dude, like you're gonna find your own path, towards truth. I mean, I love, the way Sean, like, made his own way, towards Islam. We connected very closely when I was living in LA for a couple of years back, and that was beautiful. And I respect every sincere path. I really do, and I truly believe that anyone coming from any kind of background, can walk towards, that kind of sincerity. And it's beautiful. And that's why, like, to be honest, like, I also have like super weird vibes, when people get super dogmatic, within the Bhakti movement as well, I mean, it's funny because, like, at the same time, I will never get rid of like my punk roots anyway, So, those are gonna stick. Whenever I sense like, people just following like blind dogmas, I'm like, oh, whatever, and then, I'm not, I'm not gonna confront, those people, but it's like, those people don't speak my language.
Mm.
People like Rago and yourselves, you do, and that's the kind of association I'm looking for.
Yeah, and again, that's something that's come up quite. I think it was Roland Roller that was talking about that. It was not this dogmatic, in-your-face kind of bhakti. It's a very personal, stroke private, stroke kind of cooperative kind of bhakti that he was really interesting and he practices.
Yeah, I mean, I think also like the bhakti movement had a very interesting evolution. Because like when you read stories of like early devotees, I mean, those guys were nuts, going from like like radical Hindus. Those guys were out of this world. But I mean, at the same time, they had the chance to live this incredible Shakti by Prabhupada. That was super powerful. So I believe maybe me and you, like we would have done the same. Maybe.
Yeah.
Shave your head, just walk into an ashram and never go if you're ever gonna go out, again, maybe. But now, like, I see this like beautiful, evolution of bhakti, and like all these new people coming with like a very sincere approach, and being open-minded as well, and being open to like serve one another. And I mean, to me, that's touching, that's really cool. I love it. For real. And whenever I go, like, it could be the Bhakti Center, in New York. It could be like anywhere, like in Berlin, or like when you travel to India, like you see all these people, they're just so sincere, and they're all like this new generation of bhaktas, and they even look cooler, They have
Especially, yeah, when you talk about back in the day, especially after Prabhupada left this world, when he entered in Italila, it was the early days. So we, as Western people, we were learning about even how to clean, how
we were
to
making a
do
lot of
this and that, how to treat the people, like society in general is kind of, it has some apathy against others, some hatred against others. We don't know how to love. We don't know how to do this and that. And Prabhupada teach all these things, He
Yeah.
came to teach that we are not this body. What is, in my opinion, like a basis how we can really understand that the people has the value not because of their skin color, not because of their nationality, not because of they are rich or poor, it's because why they give, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone in Bhakti is something that everyone can practice according to their tendencies.
Totally, I agree. I mean, I still believe there's like room for improvement within the bhakti movement, because sometimes when you hear like Indian devotees and like American devotees, like sometimes there's like controversial ways to like look at how we should serve, and like how we should operate. um for example, I was like listening to some very interesting interview of this guy who was born into ISKCON, and he's from India, but he kind of like, well, his parents were from India, but he grew up in New York, and he was like, dude, I have no identity whatsoever, you know,
Yeah.
because like they used to have this nickname which I didn't know about. It's like ABCD, which is something like American born confused Daisy. Daisy was like India, and and they had no identity within the bhakti movement. They had no identity within the Indian movement. It was kind of like scary, and sometimes to me that's like a very weird subject, because of course we are um, kind of like using this old Hindu knowledge somehow, and we're trying to like make it somehow like and apply it to like our Western world and stuff. And it's just like super hard to understand how to maintain like a perfect balance, between the, tradition and the way we want it to go. But, again, I find it that all these new people, all this new generation is like super sincere, and it's nice to feel very welcomed, like every time you walk into a new temple, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah. There is there was a huge Krishnacore movement in the 90s in Italy, especially Milano. Do you get some contact with this wave, like at that time, like with bands like Shout, Govinda Hardcore Project, or?
Well, in a way, I mean, those guys, I mean, it was kind of cool because like everyone was kind of like sharing the same stage, So lately I've been talking a lot to like Dharma Beat, Dario from Milan,
Yeah.
Doing House of Generation. Like, it's cool to see like all these people now who are like in their late 40s, like, early 50s, like sharing old memories and realizing how much, we still have in common, from like those early days, And like, of course, like, back in the day it was like super easy to get like divided, because like it took nothing to create like a little, team of like, I'm communist, but I believe in this, so you're not really my team, like it was just really like that. But at the same time, like the scene was like so small that we kind of shared, the same stage all the time. And it was kind of powerful. We actually had, this very cool book coming out like maybe 3 weeks ago called Disconnection, that talks about, the early days, like the 1990s in the like Italian hardcore scene.
Oh.
Dude, it's a killer book. It went sold out within a week, like 1,000 copies. I mean, it's in Italian, so I don't think it could be helpful to you, but it was nice to like see how the community responded. And we do talk about, there's like a whole section about Krishna and straight edge. It was, it's really well made. Yeah, it's cool.
Right.
Yeah, we should get it, Mike, for the book. Someone can translate it also to English.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. And should we go back? So you were in absence from the early 1990s, and you formed in, I think it was 93, 94.
Yeah.
Could you take us through that process?
Sure. Okay. So at the time I was living in the UK, I was getting into this whole animal liberation, like direct action, thing, very seriously. Like I was really, really into like militant stuff. And it wasn't just the music. I mean, the music was just like the background of our life, but it was never a priority at that time. It was, of course, like, the straight edge scene, had this like, very weird, like militant spin-off, and like a few people followed through, but it was, I mean, to me, like, yeah, at that time, like music was, yes, cool, important, but it was not a priority, So I was going back and forth, between England and here. And, me and like my other friends, from Absence, we really got into like this, direct action stuff. And, and we thought, okay, we'll just use the band, as like a means to promote, this kind of beliefs. And Absence was actually the first all vegan straight edge band in the country. And then other bands came like Purification and like all those bands came later. But yeah, we were like super focused. And like at some point, we're like, we'll just give up the band, we'll make everyone believe that, we sold out so we can do just like direct action, like, like for good. And, we kind of, we went through that process of like, going super, super militant, which of course, brought a lot of like backlash and like, like a few people didn't like that approach, I guess. I mean, you remember, it was kind of like, the emo thing on one side and whatever, the vegan straight edge on the other side. We didn't care, we really didn't care, We were super heavy. We were super like outspoken on stage. And we tried, to just push it as much as we could, you know. And to be honest with you, it was kind of cool because like years later, it happened in Czech Republic at Fluffest and also in Japan, when we toured Japan. I mean, this like random dude, he was like maybe like 21, 22, like, two different guys, like one at Fluff and one in Japan, same age. And, they were like, oh, are you Fabio from Absence? And like, yeah. And, the guys were like, your lyrics changed my life, And I was like, dude, that's so cool. That's so awesome, Like a small band like mine, could actually have such a huge impact on someone's life. That was the whole point, turning someone into something higher than just us, It was just like 5 kids playing, and it was just like, but just like it happened to you and me, we listened to bands, that really had a huge impact.
Yeah.
And I mean, those lyrics, those bands, I mean, of course you're not gonna listen to like fucking hardcore like every day, but I mean, those principles, they really shaped the people you are and the people we are, At the same time, going back to those years, like I do believe like a certain, some issues, like some topics like abortion and other stuff, it was dealt with like, very superficially, I believe. I mean, we had our idea, but I mean, those ideas were like in the brain of like 19-year-old boys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And those beliefs were not really fully shaped, So we're kind of like, promoting like, some kind of like slogans, but some stuff, it was kind of like, I wish we could have done it like in a more intelligent way. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but like you say, you're 19, and reading some of the stuff that Radunat wrote back in the day,
Crazy.
and it's absolutely crazy. And Brian Shaw says the same in his book.
Yeah.
He says how at 19 he was just so naive about a lot of this stuff. And this is when the story about one guy calling you a fascist, was that right? And then getting on stage and debating with him.
It happened a few times. I mean, in Italy, we were playing this show in Cesena, and dude, I don't know how, like, I had this guy throwing like a huge whiskey bottle, like, and it really like it didn't hit my head, but it was about to. It was like this close. I could have died, just right there on stage. It was like super close. But then, like, yeah, it happened also in the UK, I think, like, I remember we played this show, I don't even remember where, but it was kind of funny because, like, at some point, all the crowd, they were like standing backwards, like some people were just like protesting in the weirdest ways, so whatever. But I mean, to us, it was kind of like fun, but it was also like a little bit of give us a little bit of pride, because we knew we were like making people think, and people like react to things, and again, as Madhu was saying, like, we don't want apathy in the hardcore scene. Fuck no.
And it's often that you look at someone like Earth Crisis and get a vegan, like, this kind of extreme kind of radicalism that was going on at that time.
Yeah.
That you don't realize just how influential they are until afterwards, when a lot of the practice all a bit died down and everyone's grown up a little bit. And
yeah, but I had time to think over and over again about those times. And you know what? I do believe that, that kind of like militant approach was more than necessary at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, nobody gave a shit about animals. Nobody. Veganism was like unheard of in like many Western countries. Nobody ever gave a shit about anything. So of course you had to be outspoken. Of course you had to be loud, as loud as you could, And I don't know if it was like Earth Crisis, but I mean, thanks to those guys, look what we have now, like you can go to your, neighborhood and find like vegan burgers and fucking, I mean, back then it was like a miracle if you could find soy milk,
Yeah, soft mix. Wasn't it?
French fries.
You
French
know?
fries.
And of course, it's become a trend. People will say like, yeah, it's a business, whatever it is, man. It's just so much easier. You know, it makes life so much, just more decent, in a way. And I'm actually really proud of how things, evolved, and I think, for some reason, the hardcore scene, we have to give it credit, because nobody ever spoke about that stuff, in the early days. We did, fuck that. We did.
And didn't you speak about it? You shouted about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Also, just recently, I was reading an interview to the vocalist of Abnegation, that it was like a pro vegan strayish, but also pro-life band. And he says that back in the day, in the 90s, everything was like black and white.
Totally.
So it wasn't like if you are in this side or this side, or that's why there's so much confrontation between different camps. Like I have some idea, you have some idea, so we will start a fight. Like, but it was necessary, as you say, like because of these things. I think, which percentage of the punk hardcore community is vegetarian or vegan nowadays? I think 70%. That's a lot, Everywhere, every punk or hardcore show that you go, you see vegan burger, or like there is something there that is it was happening and still happening nowadays. So there is some credit to give there to these bands like Earth Crisis and
100%. I always tell them, like whenever I have, the chance to meet the guys, I'm like, dude, you don't even know, you don't even realize, the kind of impact you had on like mainstream society.
Yeah. I think you were in the Flap Fest that time that it played Earth Crisis.
Yes.
Yeah, it was like 4 years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago.
No,
and there was a protest against Earth Crisis.
It was more than that.
Yeah. They wanted to cancel them from the Flap Fest.
Yeah, I remember driving all the way from Torino to Fluff just to say hello to, Carl and those guys and drive back. Yeah. Yeah. It was funny, like the same day or the day before the show, there was like a shooting in Munich. And I remember my brother calling saying like, dude, where are you? I'm like, I'm in Munich. I'm just going there to like, maybe have lunch. Just like, just get out of fucking town. There's like a shooting and there was like a terrorist attack or something. The same. Yeah. And it's funny to talk about this stuff, sounds so old school. There is no more terrorist attacks these days.
They throw a beer on them, and also they throw some hygienic towels with blood to the band at that time.
I was on stage. I
was there.
Yeah, I remember.
It was crazy.
But I mean, those guys, they've gone through like a lot of shit, people used to throw fucking steaks on stage. A really bad taste, stuff, whatever. And you will always have like, people living in that kind of guna, whatever, man. Let's be, one thing that Bhakti really taught me, let's try to be more tolerant, and compassionate towards ignorant people as well,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you.
Sorry, Mike. There is kind of so much intolerance in the hardcore scene nowadays. How you see it?
Oh, I don't even know, man. I don't go to many shows. I don't know. The way I look at it, whenever I go and see like old bands, let's say Gorilla Biscuits and like Youth of Today, Shelter, whatever, I see a lot of smiling faces, and to me something Civ, made really clear on stage a couple of years back. It was really cool. It was like, I mean, we're not here to make like millions. I mean, of course, they make a little money, whatever. But it's like, we're here to give you the same feeling you had when you were 16 years old and go through the same kind of vibes and give you that kind of energy. And I was like, yeah, it really works, So to me, like going to hardcore shows now is like just connecting, with friends. It's like a high school reunion thing, and having that kind of like, energy sharing. And it's just a beautiful experience. I don't know that many like new hardcore bands. I have no idea, but I know, for example, in my experience, if we ever get the chance to play again, with Destroy Babylon now, I mean, I also want to have, this kind of like, of course, like, militant approach, because like, the lyrics do speak about animal liberation and stuff like that. But at the same time, I want to be like more inclusive and like, just uplift people and try to inspire people to become better people.
Yeah.
Because that's the when I go to a gig now here in Portsmouth and I see my old friends or those that were there back in the day, back in the 90s. As you say, actually it's better because we're not young kids. We're not, I'm more punk than you anymore.
Exactly.
But I'm higher Mohican than you.
Exactly.
It's there. Hello, I haven't seen you for years.
Exactly.
That kind of feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some people, I feel so sorry sometimes. Like, some people seem to be like totally stuck in the past, like, and they do have like, this beef, for like, something happened in 94. I'm like, dude, it's like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And you're like 50 years old, you should focus on something else, But yeah, I mean, 99% of the people are like, in a very like mellow, chill, kind of vibe. And I like that, and you can tell that, the hardcore principles, really helped, these people become like very nice human beings. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. That's what it's about, isn't it? Yeah.
It worked. Yeah. And that's what, I'm trying to do, through my bhakti, like I'm trying to be like a better human being, every day. I make mistakes, of course, I will make more mistakes, yes, but I'll try to get just a little better, a tiny better every day,
Yeah.
And that's what counts.
I wanted to ask you, I'm just looking at a list of songs here from Absence, and a couple of songs really, really kind of came out at me, was Gaia's Justice and Gaia Calls We Die. Yeah. And was there that kind of sense of spirituality back then in the notion of Gaia and the Mother Earth, so to speak?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it wasn't that in your face, but as I said, it's always been around. It's always been around. In all of my lyrics, also like in Destroy Babylon. It's all about consciousness and like striving to attain a higher level of consciousness. Again, it's something that has taken time, to put into like a perfect shape, and it's not taking a perfect shape yet, like it's always evolving, right? But yeah, as I said, back in the day, to be honest with you, like we were, or at least I was, I'm talking for myself, like I was ready to go to jail. I was ready to go to prison, like I had no fear to give up my life, for my ideals and principles, so yeah, like, Gaia Calls We Die meant like whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes, man, like, and, I mean, we never went like super, super deep or hard, but we tried, we tried our best.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, was also in the 90s, like even with the names of the bands, to talk about Gaia. And you can see it in bands like Children of Gaia. There in South America also so many bands use this concept of Gaia as a living
the divine
being, so and every moment it can take revenge. So the revenge of Gaia.
Again, so think back, like who was talking about, earth, whatever it was, like nobody was talking about this stuff back in the day, man. Like nobody, you know. Pollution. I mean, of course, people were talking about pollution, but like, we're talking about, what happens in like, slaughterhouses and like, the kind of emissions, that like, farming creates and stuff like that. It was like 30 years before whatever, like, whoever is talking about it now, which is insane. And yeah, those concepts were like super powerful.
And it is incredible how, I suppose mainstream is the wrong word for it, I suppose, but it is really the right word for it as well, that how such a kind of so-called fringe movement like veganism has become so prevalent now.
So big.
Yeah.
All over, man.
It's great, isn't it?
To the point where like, the word vegan isn't cool anymore. You should say plant-based,
Of course, plant-based, yes. Yeah. Blood cotton.
Why
be on my back, wouldn't he, for that? Yeah.
Why you say this, Fabio?
Oh man, it's just a
I will let you know. Yes.
Yeah, it's just a feeling, like the word vegan, some people like, especially younger people have like, this like rejection straight away. No, you're one of those vegans, talking about, because sometimes like, vegans can be the worst enemies of vegans,
Yeah.
Sometimes if you find like an annoying vegan, man, it's like a pain in the fucking ass. But at the same time, maybe I was a pain in the ass back in the day. But again, like now, like all these new restaurants and stuff, they use the word, the term plant-based. Makes it more, I don't know, approachable,
Yeah, a friend of mine, good friend of mine, she's been vegan for very much like you, really. I think she's a bit older than both of us. I'm 50 now. You're 4 years behind me, aren't you? And she was a vegan since kind of the mid 80s. Wow. And she talks about the new vegan now, she's a fucking pain in the ass.
I know. Yeah. Totally. So yeah. But like, I don't know.
There's so many jokes about it. Like,
I don't know about you guys, but I do have like quite a few vegan tattoos. I can't cover those up.
No.
I don't have any plant-based tattoo yet.
Fabio, one thing I was just curious. I just wanted to ask about the lyrical content of Destroy Babylon. When we see lyrics, for example, of songs like, there's not actually a song, but it's Dead to All the Traders.
Yeah.
Do you see in different way nowadays that how it was before?
To be honest, yes. I mean, that was like a very, again, like hardcore approach, to like, people, not even people selling out. It was more like, people who stood by your side and believed in whatever you believed, and then all of a sudden, like change your back, and now they're like against you, and they speak against what you do, and like, they try to like interfere with your actions and shit. And to me, back in the day, it was like a very heartfelt issue. Obviously, again, like Bhakti taught me so many things, about accepting other people and other ideas, and be more tolerant and compassionate. And I'm super thankful for that, because he brought a lot of peace, to my mind, because like there is like, in my lyrics, one of my songs, I say like, this hatred comes from love. But at the same time, I realized that for many, many years, man, I lived in this like state of mind full of like resentment, or even like hatred, towards people who are doing things that I considered, wrong, right?
Yeah.
But then again, like, of course, I was trying to struggle and I was trying to fight, those, whatever was happening. But at the same time, I was like fighting myself, because like I had burned so many bridges, and I was like burning myself, I was going to sleep, with this kind of like mindset, and I was waking up, with the same kind of like war mindset. And dude, that's not healthy, not at all. And I guess it comes, with age and a little bit of maturity. And I'm like, dude, I want to live like just a slightly more peaceful life, you know? And of course, you know, there's like actions and people that I totally disagree with. But I recognize, you know, there's like a spark of Krishna in those people too, you know? And back in the day, I didn't have this kind of approach, right? And I always say that, you know, it's very easy to love the people who love you, you know?
Yeah.
It's much harder to love the people that hate you and do something that, you know, you're totally against. And I'm trying to practice that, you know, every day, you know, in my work and life and, you know, like spiritual life. You know, whenever I see someone that does something and I see like my reaction, you know,
Yeah.
and if I get like weird and like, you know, my old me gets like weird about it, that's a red flag, you know. That's when I really have to focus more on my spiritual life and say like, okay, let's try to be like a little bit tolerant, you know. Let's see how we can embrace, you know, those people.
Yeah. A businessman's every time that he goes before to sleep, he's checking how much money he got during the day. But a spiritual man, when he go to sleep, he's checking inside, he's looking inside himself and looking how much spiritual progress he did during the day.
Yeah,
So
and how you can do
that
better.
makes a difference.
It makes a whole lot of difference. Like, I actually like, I try, like, I really do. I'll do a little scan of like, you know, where did I fuck up today, you know, and how can, you know, how can I improve tomorrow, you know, and you know, sometimes like, you know, in a very practical way, it's like really hard, you know, to combine like, you know, business like I do, or you know, some material stuff, you know, with your spiritual life. But at the same time, I'm super happy, you know, I'm super happy with like trying to really focus, you know, and putting like Krishna in the middle all the time, you know. That's you know, it makes it special, you know, it makes it magical somehow, you know.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, like I could, you know, leave this body and I could have my business taken away tomorrow. I don't think I would overreact in any way. I'd accept it, you know. And I had this talk, you know, with Raghu like a few weeks ago, where I was kind of like, you know, not complaining, but I was like really concerned, you know, with how much loss we had, you know, during the pandemic, right? And he said the same. And at the same time, we were like, well, maybe this money or this, you know, these things were not ours to begin with. So, you know, who needs to complain about something that, you know, we never had in the first place, right?
Yeah.
You've talked
Mike?
about how being a devotee is changing as an everyday life, and in terms of how you deal with your life.
Yeah.
Does it? It's obviously changed the way in which you now go on stage and you now perform with Destroy Babylon. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, as I said, you know, we haven't had the chance to play, you know, lately, but you know, as soon as I hit stage now, I would have like a very, you know, again, like a more inclusive, you know, kind of approach. And I realize now, like, you know, screaming in someone's face doesn't help him grow in any way, you know. I mean, first of all, we have to leave and, you know, we have to lead by example, you know. And if people like, you know, understand, you know, you have some kind of like personal integrity, then they will follow like whatever you have to say. If you're just talking for the sake of like opening your mouth, I mean, nobody's gonna give a shit about what you have to say anyway. So first of all, you know, show integrity, you know, in your daily life. And second, maybe like again, trying to like help people and other guys to like uplift, you know, whatever they have to, you know, they're going through in life, you know. I mean, there's a beautiful thing about associating with eagles, you know. If you're like, if you can totally teach someone how to fly, just like someone taught us how to fly sometimes, you know, we're like, oh man, I don't know, I feel broken. And and like, some person maybe magically like appeared in your life and somehow he showed you how to do it. It's not like someone is going to appear and say, use your fucking wings, and you're going to fly. No, it's not going to work like that. Like maybe like a little bit of like kindness, will help you grow. And that's how it works to me,
Yeah.
So I'll try to have that kind of approach now, I hope.
And how do the other band members feel about you being a devotee?
Well, Lars, our bass player, he's been a devotee for a long, long time.
Right.
Yeah. And there's like this like total respect, Again, like, Krishna has always been around, we never had any kind of like political issue against it at all. And there was like total respect, for, this kind of choices. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me one thing that in one of the interviews that we made some weeks ago with Jayanta Das from Agnostic Front.
Mhm.
He says Krishna consciousness is the last rebellion, and also he says so many people should not care about if there are Hare Krishnas in the hardcore scene or not, because we are from the beginning,
Right.
We're from the beginning.
Yeah.
With Cause for Alarm, with Antidote, with it wasn't like a full Krishnacore thing in the beginning, but there was Chromax also, So
Right.
also himself, Jayanta is a devotee, and also Todd Dude, who was also my god brother. He was playing with Agnostic Front. He got the initiation.
Mhm.
All these guys were from the beginning. So
Yeah, but how cool is that? Like when was it? Like they had this show in New York 2 days ago.
Yeah, Madhu was talking about that.
Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah. How cool! Like 2,000 people showed up at Tompkins Square Park in front of like Prabhupada's tree, to play a free show for hardcore kids. How cool is that?
Yeah.
And I guess New York is blessed, with this crazy cool connection, with Prabhupada, preaching in the same exact spot where the hardcore scene was born.
Yeah.
Such a blessing.
Yeah, as far as I know, the CBGBC was like just around the corner with Hare Krishna temple. So many punks used to go to the temple to have some prasad.
Man, it's like what, 2 blocks away? That's like super close. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So one of the things that sometimes we ask to the guys during the interviews is this connection. How the hell happened this connection between Krishna consciousness and the hardcore punk scene? How you see this?
Well, like I have like I've heard all these stories from like the Lower East Side, especially from Raghu and Purcell, and the early days were fun. Fun because like there was kind of like all these like bizarre violent kids that somehow were like looking for food sometimes, looking for some kind of shelter, and they ended up spending time with like swamis and stuff. But again, it's not a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that Prabhupada tried to spread Krishna consciousness starting from the Bowery. That's where the CBGB was placed at.
Yeah.
And I mean, it cannot be a coincidence. It's crazy. And like the early guys had like this approach. And I remember like when Raghu talks about how he learned about Krishna consciousness from the guys from the Chromax, it was scary at times, because I believe it was Flanagan who told him like, oh, you're not this body, you're not this, in a very harsh way. So I don't know, but I can tell you one thing, okay, with that, this is my own opinion about it too. I mean, hardcore has been for very extreme personalities. Like Carl, from Earth Crisis once said, like hardcore is for lunatics, And dude, how could you go more extreme, or how could you be like more weird than like going from punk to wearing orange robes? Like you have to be extreme. You have to be like, that kind of personality to like embrace, this crazy, rebellious, peaceful, it's a crazy thing, for mainstream culture, for mainstream society is like super weird,
Yeah.
And, back in the days, I don't think anyone but the hardcore kids, could approach, Krishna consciousness, in a better way, in a more natural way, because it was just natural to them to be rebellious to begin with, and it's been like that, I mean, I look at myself like, dude, I've been a black and white person all my life, right? I couldn't be like a middle class dude, doing middle class things. No, like it's just not me. Maybe it's my ego. I don't even know. It's maybe, I'm living in Rajas. I don't even know. But, that's why I feel that attraction towards Krishna and like, the whole movement, because it's also kind of like extreme and beautiful. I always call it a bunch of beautiful freaks. We are a bunch of beautiful freaks, man.
And that was similar to what Jayanta Das said, wasn't it? He said, this is the true rebellion. How else can you rebel? This is it. This is punk.
And honestly, I don't know if you ever made it to like, some Indian temple. I mean, dude, when they do like those crazy bhajans, it's like a hardcore show, man.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing more similar, but it's just more beautiful because it's not the people in the band, putting their ego on stage. It's always and Krishna in the middle.
Yeah.
How beautiful is that?
The devotees also,
wild.
The devotees also used to do the cycle pit. They go around and jumping. They have the.
We should start stage diving from the altars and
when they are dancing, yeah. Nice, yeah.
So
that's a good point.
This kind of approach, man. I mean, it's for extreme personalities, but also like beautiful, sincere people looking for truth. And if you combine that together, it's been like the last 40 years of like crazy looking hardcore kids trying to be respectable human beings.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of truth there. I think what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of truth in that sense of kind of extremism, and I like the idea of the beautiful freaks. I think,
yeah,
and it does take a certain person. And in my other research, in my other life, I've researched the New Age traveller movement over here. And again, in fact, a lot of them are older than me. So we're talking in their 60s. And there's a lot of people still living on trucks, still living on the road, still going to Stonehenge. And they are a bunch of beautiful freaks. And they are fantastic. They're like one people. Yeah, they are like a tribe. And they really do look out for each other. It's incredible.
Yeah. So, I mean, I find it beautiful to connect, to two beautiful souls like yourselves, and sharing this kind of realizations after 25, 30 years of like, sticking around and like making mistakes and trying to be better, trying to be better, because, even back in the days, of course, people were striving for like small things, like I believe this, you believe, but I mean, everyone just tried to share some kind of justice and some kind of like higher principle. And I find that so inspiring to this day, and that's why 25 years later, we're still here trying to like, hey, how can we improve today? What can we do better today? That's powerful.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And we're constantly learning. We're constantly moving. And that notion of reflection. I go to AA. I haven't been that much lately, but again, like what you do every night, that idea of looking over your day and thinking, this is how I could have acted better in this part of the day, and this is what I could do better in the future. it's all part and parcel of that kind of higher power sort of spirituality.
Totally, yeah. And we all, we all have different personalities, so there's always like a different, way to approach things, But I mean, for myself, I guess, as for now, like this beautiful, peaceful approach, to like respect other people and just be, compassionate and like wait, until I open my mouth and give my response, because I used to be like, oh, just like all over people. I'm like, no, let me try to like, sit back and listen more, and understand where you're coming from. So maybe we can find like a better understanding of each other,
Yeah.
It's very mature, but it's very simple. It's so simple. It's like super basic stuff, that can make you live like a way better life.
Yeah, totally agree. And throughout this the interview, one of the questions that we asked those that were kind of involved in Krishnacore back in the day was how you dealt with tensions within the Krishnacore scene.
Right.
And not that you dealt with so much about Krishnacore, but you talked about the tensions between obviously being vegan and those kind of militant kind of vegan and the tensions in the scene. But anyway, part of that question that we've got is Ray Capo's interview in Maximum Rock and Roll number 79, where he in 1989, where he's completely pulled apart.
Yeah.
And just the thing that's I've thought about constantly through this interview is the amount of hassle and the amount of criticism someone like Raghunath has had.
Yeah.
For 25 years and more, and he's still doing it. He's still doing what he wants to do. He feels right, and you've got to give it to the man for doing this.
Totally. And like whenever you talk about this kind of stuff to him, he will go back and say, you know what? I've been going through some shit, but look at what Radhanath Swami is going through. I mean, this guy has been building hospitals and doing crazy stuff for India and like, like worldwide also, like crazy stuff. Still, he's going through incredible criticism. How can a beautiful soul like that, be criticized? I find it impossible, but still it happens, Kali Yuga is Kali Yuga, people will attack you no matter what, and, Raghu, man, I respect the man so much. Like, he had this kind of charisma, that just like brought people together, and we're still here talking about it like 35 years later, maybe. Yeah. And, like you have to, I mean, of course, but I mean, I understood that the hardcore scene kind of talked about, being like towards freedom of speech and like, this, but I mean, we were so fucking conservative at times,
Yeah.
And of course, when you bring like new issues like religion or spirituality, I mean, people's reaction are going to be so tough, It's like, it's always been like that, people are so conservative. And it's funny because like now I'm looking at like, this very like niche markets, like, skateboarders or like whatever, like, musicians from like a certain, background, that he kind of thought, okay, these guys were punks, these guys were like super open-minded. Wrong. They were like super narrow-minded, and like it's always been like that, and once you know it, you accept it and you laugh about it.
Yeah. In my research on Krishnacore, right from the very start, I interviewed Raghunath, and we were emailing, and I interviewed him very, very briefly, kind of think for Skype in those days, and it really frustrated me because I said to him, "What was it that attracted you to Krishna consciousness right from the very start?" And I wanted this whole kind of mantra, if that's the right word, about his spirituality and what drew him to it. And all he said was, it was because we were hungry. And that was it.
Honest, man. That's so honest. Yeah. But that's what I was saying before. Like a lot of kids back in the day, they were looking for food, man.
Yeah. That's what he said.
Food. Simple as that. And like, I mean, I see it now, at our local temple, we see a lot of kids, just coming for like, the Sunday feast. I get it, awesome food, man. So it might change your life forever. You never know.
I was like, no, I don't want that. I want some deep philosophical understanding. Something. No, I'm just hungry. He said.
And somehow they get some benefit, and somehow it makes a change in their lives, you know.
Yeah.
They go for something, but they stay for another, so for something higher. It reminds me one history of one policeman in Colombia. In Colombia, he went to the temple because he wanted to be some kind of spy of the Hare Krishna movement in Colombia. If they are doing something weird, or some this kind of stuff, because he was a policeman and he used to do these things. And so he was doing some investigation about it. So he went to the temple. He was staying in the lectures and all, with the notebook, writing everything that it could be like kind of suspicious about something weird of the Hare Krishnas, if they are creating a cult or some terrorist, and terrorism. And then after some time, he became a devotee.
Wow.
It was everything okay, he became a devotee, this policeman.
There you go.
Yeah. There are so many stories about some people that it was like even against making fun about the Hare Krishnas or against the Hare Krishnas, but they stayed with the Hare Krishnas because it's the
bhakti, man.
Principle of love, what is so attractive. And Krishna is the embodiment of love, so it's all attractive, and they stay there. So, Mike?
Well, we've sort of I think we've been on for about an hour and 20 minutes. And it's just been a fantastic interview. I really like hearing about punk music, and I like hearing about histories, but I also really like hearing about people's spiritual journeys. And you're one of the many kind of interviewees. It just seems as if we're kind of just sitting here having a Zoom cup of tea or something, or I was going to say a Zoom drink, as if, because what my friends say to me, did you fancy a Zoom drink? Well, yeah, okay then, but they obviously know that I don't drink, but, so it's been wonderful. To end, what would you like to say to people out there? What would be your advice if you could say anything?
I don't have any advice. No, I mean, I guess, first of all, let's just try. I'm talking about myself, I'll try to be like open-minded, and accepting of people's beliefs. I do believe every sincere path is a beautiful path, to walk on. And just try to be more tolerant and think twice before you open your mouth and just like strike back, because like you never know, that person in front of you might be the person who could change your life forever.
Yeah, and that is wise words. Please come over and play in England. come back to England for a little bit.
I will sometimes.
No. Can I go too?
Yes, well, actually, I don't know, Madhu. I don't know if I could put up with you as well, to be honest with you.
You invite everyone to UK.
The last time he was in the UK with me, he was dressing me up in a dhoti.
Yeah. Another beautiful freak. Yeah.
Like 2 years ago. 2 years ago, no? 2 years ago.
Yeah, something like that. They wouldn't let him into the UK. They had to phone me up to ask for my address to let Madhu in.
Yeah.
I can't.
Okay, Fabio.
Thank you.
It was I think it was an incredible conversation. Like to share. Nice that you share your experience, your journey with us. It's really inspiring, and of course there are many things that probably could be like no spoken, but it was really nice. That
I mean, it's good to talk about 25 years in 1 hour and a half.
Yeah.
yeah,
Crazy.
yeah, yeah. We should have a second second chapter.
Yes.
Meet up real life. I really want to meet people real life and
Yeah.
share.
Nice. Fabio, one thing, are you okay with this coronavirus? The situation?
Are you
It's
okay?
okay with you?
What
It's
do you mean?
treating you well?
Yeah. I mean, today was the first day we could, that we could open, our business. I mean, of course, we lost a lot of money, whatever, but lucky enough, no family members, were harmed. I do have friends, that lost, like family and stuff, and you know, trying to pray, for those people. And I really hope that, this shit is gonna be something, we're gonna look back and just like smile soon, man.
Yeah. Because I just saw one thing in your Instagram that someone tried to break the door of your shop.
They broke our windows. They broke
Yeah,
our
the windows.
we had a
Yeah.
huge protest, yeah, because like they broke our windows. But it was just like stupid whatever, protesters, they just like
And then you made a T-shirt about it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
guys, I thought this guy is a genius. Like,
that's bhakti, man.
okay.
That's bhakti, for real. Always, whenever I think about bad shit happening, I'm like, dude, this is not happening to me, it's happening for me. So you
Yeah.
break my windows, dude, I'll try to make a t-shirt to promote how stupid you are.
Yeah.
So
And it's sold out.
yeah,
The shirt. Yeah.
yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Good. Nice.
Oh,
Okay. So thanks again, Fabio.
much for
I hope to see you
Thank you very much.
one day
sure. Yeah,
in
you
Italy
guys
or
are
Czech
more than
Republic.
welcome to come
Let's
over.
see.
We have a
Yeah.
beautiful community here, man. We
Yeah.
have a beautiful bhakti community. You guys should just come and visit for real.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Great.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
And
having.
thank you, Mike. Also.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Madhu.
See you
Hare
later.
Krishna.
Bye.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Very good.